Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing fantastic. So, it's very important that us American Muslims who are more now conservative leaning, especially with the culture war, help Christians to understand we Muslims are not their enemy. See, this is what I have noticed. There are people who lost their sons and daughters in the war with Muslims in the Middle East because of the military industrial complex brainwashed them to hate a particular community so they could maximize the dehumanization of a particular group so they could loot the resources. These wounds will take time to heal. They'll take time to heal. And just like now, nobody has things against, North Koreans because there was a Korean War, right? South Korea, North Korea. There was a Korean War. You don't see Americans not liking Koreans anymore. Same with the Vietnam War. You don't see people suspecting the Vietnamese. When America attacked and bombed Japan and people were suspicious of Japanese, that went away. So the same, I believe, will happen with Muslims when the next generations come. The pain of who lost who in the wars will subside. And I believe more Christians will see they have a lot more in common with Muslims concerning religious values, social values, than they do with the secular, liberal, feminist atheists who align themselves with occultists and are pushing very Sodom and Gomorrah-ish philosophies, right? So if you look at the trajectory, the pain's going to go away with the conservative Republican Christians, eventually, God willing. But the leftists on the fringe wing of the Democratic Party, they are gaining power and taking over the party. Their trajectory is expanding, not being minimized. So if you try to check out and think, who's going to be the future enemy of Muslims? It will be the liberals, because they're not who they used to be. They used to be, we don't like Monsanto. Now they turned into, we love Pfizer, and if you don't love Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, we're going to make you lose your job, you won't be able to go to college, and we're going to ruin your life, right? That's a huge change. From people who hated Big Pharma, didn't like the FDA, didn't like Monsanto, they were very about organic, natural remedies, kind of way more hippie, anti-establishment. Then you saw them flip and go very pro-authoritarian during the lockdowns. You saw them be radicals for free speech in the past. Totally way more just, we will not believe everything the president says, to now seeing them champion Biden and then censor everyone who memes him and points things out when they were really harsh on Trump and never gave him credit for anything good he did and memed him. They showed, Kathy Griffin had his decapitated head, a model of that. They did Trump on a toilet, in a diaper. The level of mocking they did was really strong. But they will not allow YouTube channels and memers on the right to mock Biden when he's empirically a much worse candidate mentally and ethically. In his record, he's a dinosaur politician, highly corrupt. They won't let you mention this. And so, how they have changed is for the worse of who they used to be. I was once someone who thought Bernie Sanders was an interesting guy. Not anymore. When he bent the knee to Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, he didn't thank Kyle Kulinski for all the endorsements. I saw, this guy really is a trashy guy. He gave up fighting for universal health care, which was something I really wanted, and instead bent the knee to Big Pharma. So, you have to understand that the way you talk to a liberal, they're really in their philosophy. They're not going to budge. They're expanding. Their mafia is expanding. This is their favorite month, by the way. I think you know what I mean. And they are really targeting the school curriculums. They're very forceful. They're in it to win it. Muslims have to wake up to that. And see, with the conservative Christians, I almost pity them because they've been brainwashed by people like David Wood, Christian Prince, and others to hate us. And there's a lot more that could be said with the Zionists and such who found out, hey, we can turn Christians against Muslims for our own benefit. Let's do that. So, what I'm trying to do, God willing, is to help certain Christians calm down. And I hear their complaints. Now, in the UK, you hear those conservative Christians say they don't like some of the behaviors of some immigrants. And I started looking at, is it really Islam they're mad at, or is it the behavior of certain immigrants in their communities? And I think it's actually the bad behavior of individuals, but they seem to assume it's about Islam. So, hopefully, the more Muslims act better and hold each other accountable across the world, we can fix that. Because every country complains about new immigrants in the beginning. That's just how it goes, because cultures do clash. It takes time, and then it's another group. And then it goes on and on and on. It's just how it is. And so, we can't really be surprised when people see a new culture coming to their culture, and then they have some uncomfortable moments in time. It just takes time to get used to each other. But I can see how frustrated the American Christians are with the leftists, but they can't let go of some of their bigotry towards Muslims because it's been so ingrained to them for so long. And the Christians have been brainwashed into not liking modesty, so when they see modest Muslim women, they think of it as backwards. And some of the Christian men have overindulged in pornography, and country music is what did this. Country music shows very poorly dressed women. They look just like strippers, but they sing these songs, and you're like, okay. Clearly, the Christian men who have lost connection to this very orthodox, strict, modest history that they used to have are going to have a hard time connecting to Islamic modesty. And so when Christians shave their faces and don't grow beards and they see a Muslim with a beard, they can sometimes be uncomfortable with that form of masculinity. So it takes time for people to become comfortable and explain this to them. And the Christians must make a choice. Are you going to be more upset at a Muslim woman covering, or are you going to be more upset at the people who men are wearing makeup and teaching your boys how to wear a dress and high heels and how to tuck in their balls and do things like that? Can you fight two battles at once? American Christians have to wake up to that fact. Are you just going to listen to David Wood all day and be hateful towards Muslims who are your actual allies, even though we'll disagree till Judgment Day on who Jesus was and other things like that? Or are you going to align yourself with atheists who use satire to mock Jesus heavily, who promote after-school clubs of the Church of Satan? Are you going to side with the secular liberal feminist atheists who glorify abortion, prostitution, thug music, say abolish all prisons, want to revoke your gun rights, who want your daughters to do OnlyFans, who want your children in debt to college, and so much more, who are trying to force medical fascism and oppression and segregation upon you against your will? Is that really who you want to align yourself with? Because you can't fight two enemies at the same time. It is quite difficult. Having a temporary alliance so that religious values repair society again, that is the solution. And so when you see a Christian farmer and a Muslim goat herder, they actually have more in common than the bisexual, laptop, smug, PhD, woke tard sitting in their air-conditioned office and who's never picked a vegetable in their life and has never picked up a chicken egg and who's extremely out of touch with the common person's struggles. So the Christians really have to get serious. Another thing that holds Christian back from understanding Muslims is Christians, some of them really love alcohol, when better Christians say this is a vice that should be avoided. It's true, old Christian cowboys had some whiskey, and then some old Irish ones have some gin, and then old Russian Orthodox ones have vodka, and Italian Catholics love their red wine. So it's hard to pull that liquor bottle, that wine bottle, out of their hand because they love alcohol. But if we remind them as Muslims that these intoxicants, what have they given you? How many mistakes have you done in your life when you were drunk? Your daughters drink it, they get passed around, they get a train pulled on them. Is that good for them? You get in car accidents. Is this good for you? You get a beer belly, beer gut. Is it healthy for you to, instead of going to church and praying, to drink beer and watch football? American football, the NFL, not soccer. Is this good for you? If you give these dawahs and these certain points of waking up the Christians to who they really are in religious orthodoxy, telling them, don't just pay attention to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Look at the Old Testament. Stop hating it. Okay? And that's why I love the Hadith, is because the Hadith also can wake certain Christians up to something else and help them see that there's a lot better things for them if they have Muslims as their neighbors. In history, there was the Crusades. There will always be arguments. But, also in Islamic history, the Umayyads, the Fatimids, there was the Seljuks, the Mamluks, the Abbasids, the Rashidun. Empires fall, they rise, there's infighting, Mongols came and fought, the Protestants and Christians, Mormons, all of them, Jehovah's Witnesses, everybody has their skirmishes amongst their own religion. And no ideology gets along 100% of the time. But what Christians have to realize is that what kind of future do you want for your children? Do you want them to be doing OnlyFans, wearing belly shirts showing their cleavage, wearing tight yoga pants, sterilizing their wombs on birth control forever, sleeping with hundreds of men, not getting married, being in debt in college? Do you want that for your daughter? The liberal philosophy, the liberal idols, do you want that for your kid? Or would you rather your daughter be modest and she has a couple Muslim women friends who pray 5 times a day, they wear the niqab, the himar, the hijab, the jilbab, you name it, and they're very respectable, they have class, they're not trying to sleep with your husband, they're not showing their boobs to half the world and all the dogs, they carry themselves well, they don't swear, they're not hoochies, they're not these low trashy women, they're not pimping themselves for $5. That is better. Christians have to see that again, which will take time. So Muslim immigrants who aren't born in America see liberals sometimes as these kind, empathetic, open-armed people. But someone like me who's grown up around both conservatives and liberals and later converted to Islam and has never lived in a country outside of America, okay, I can see it from a different perspective, where you can see how liberalism has ruined this country and the sexual liberation, female empowerment era has caused broken homes, and I am a direct result of that. And how they want to continue this philosophy, and they don't care who it hurts, because that is kind of what they want. So, studying Islam, you see how liberals are very different. And as someone, you know that I like to read the Christian texts. And you'll see more similarities with Christians and Muslims than you do with the atheists who believe in Darwin, the Big Bang Theory, that there's nothing after death. They mock you for it. Everything we do, they mock. They love pills. They love letting go of their inhibitions. They worship themselves. Okay? They only listen to their own wills. They worship lab coats and their saints are their PhD professors. It's quite different. A very different way of looking at our life on this earth. And Christians must realize, what is the purpose of life? You have Judgment Day. Muslims believe in Judgment Day. Okay? I feel like real Orthodox Christians, they have a more of a window, not the new Christians who blend in reincarnation, numerology, gematria. There's some Christians who have gotten so lost in their dogma that they're literally doing bid'ah, innovation in their religion, and then they're all mixed up. It's quite sad to see. Astrology, horoscopes, all that stuff. They're literally putting it all in their religion and they're not listening to their own Bibles. It's quite sad. So, if we remind them, what do you want America to look like? Why does it bother you that a woman covers, but not covers? And is that the devil enticing you to see pornographic images instead of calling you to something better, which is modesty, as Mary is depicted in your own art? Jesus has a beard in your own art. Why are you so against us Muslims? And so we have to heal the wounds. And so, for me, studying many religions, but definitely studying Christianity from the scholars, and from learning from Islam, from the classic texts, you see the differences. I prefer Islam, obviously. But as somebody who's read Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, who went through an atheistic phase, who's read nihilism and learned about cynicism, and who's read a lot of philosophy, you can definitely see there is a difference between them and religious people. And Christians must decide, while the culture war is heating up, as the leftist mafia encroaches upon us, who are you going to choose to have your back? Are you going to still keep shaming Muslims simply because we love to be modest and stay sober, have polygamy, big families, we worship Allah, we pray? Will you hate us while also thinking you're going to win against those leftists? Do you want to be subjugated under them? Do you want them to take your own children from you? Their inclusive philosophy is a trap, because Orthodox Christianity did not preach that. And Christians kept bending the knee, more Disney, more Nickelodeon, more iPads, more tablets, and these media companies with their agendas took your own kids from you right in front of you. And you only realized it when they were rebellious teens acting like Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift and Britney Spears. We have to go back to the classical era when religious values ruled. And that is what must be done. And Christians and Muslims have lived together disharmoniously and sufficiently on a regular basis. We have to remember that. I know a lot of great Christians. And I've known a lot of terrible Muslims who troll me online, cut my videos out of context, literally make up the worst lies about me that I've ever heard. And so I know that no Muslim is perfect, and not every Christian is hateful. But what I do know is that every liberal wants their philosophy to be dominant. And they will use any tool at their expense, and they are winning in America. And if Christians and Muslims don't recognize that they must come together, then we are in trouble. There are more Muslims than there are Jews. Jews are not really a huge player in this scenario. Okay? So sure, let Ben Shapiro hate us Muslims and Steven Crowder, right? But with other Christians, we must help them see that we are not their enemies, that there is good in Islam, And it's not going to be an easy task because some Christians, Republicans, they're loud, hyper aggressive. I know how to deal with those kind of people. You just take a couple of their insults. It's like dealing with a very rowdy rooster. You get used to it. But eventually you can get them to see your perspective. With a liberal, it's more posh. It's more Luciferian. It's more dark, dirty, filthy, vile. But it's masked in this sort of posh suit with smug elitism and their fancy language and their weird stare and their head nodding and their emotional mirroring, the corporate crooked smile. It's quite different than talking to a farmer who never met a Muslim, but he watches the wars in the East and then he gets afraid. It's much easier to show him we're not your enemies than it is to talk to a pink-haired, hairy armpit, black-booted Berkeley graduate. Much different. Much different. Much different. They only like Muslim women as long as those Muslim women never actually start saying what it is they believe in. Recognize this. I can recognize it. We must understand what's the path for us as Muslims and how Christians should wake up. And if you have someone preaching to you to hate Muslims and befriend atheists, befriend Hindus before a Muslim, I really hope that you will take a step back and be rational and think, is a polytheist better than a monotheist? Is someone who denies God better than someone who worships God 5 times a day? These basic things you can think about as a Christian should help you to understand that we Muslims are not your enemy. Sure, we can disagree on certain things, but all of us will see on the Day of Judgment how we are sorted. But now, our kids need us. Will we sit back and watch America fall? Or will we stand together and maintain religious values? Think of what we have in common. And then think of what we don't have in common with the secular, liberal, feminist, atheists, and occultists. And ask yourself, is the Christian community strong enough to go against both? And look at how they've already destroyed Christianity from within. Look how Alex Jones is now, with Blair White. How Fox News hired Caitlyn Jenner. So some things to think about. Just some things to think about. Look how Project Veritas, even though I don't like everything they do, they're constantly leaking how Twitter censors only conservatives. Facebook censors conservatives heavily. Just examine how anyone who preaches religious values is deeply oppressed right now. We must understand where we are and strategize together in order to protect our children. Protect our children. So think about it and really reflect.